What is skill expression and why does it matter? Skill expression can be seen and done in completely different ways depending on what game you play, whether it's multiplayer or even single player, or even through stuff like chess. Skill expression is something that the more you play online competitive games, though, you'll see the conversation be brought up more and more and more, because while skill expression can be, used in ways just to shit on people for playing a certain character, I'm looking at you, Squirrel Girl, it's also very important to online multiplayer games, just competitive games in general. Any type of game where you have some type of competitive nature towards it, skill expression is going to matter and is going to be important for the game's survival along the years, for it to, be seen as an actual competitive game, not just a casual game that people can play for fun. And I got inspired to talk about skill expression in general because Street Fighter recently announced that Sagat was going to be coming to Street Fighter 6, and a lot of people were noticing that his kit was different, and they're, suspecting that it's because of, the modern control scheme that they introduced in SF6. So just kind of want to talk about, I got inspired by that, and I kind of want to talk about, how this, matters and why skill expression can be expressed in completely different ways, whether it's complex, whether it's, sort of nuanced or new player friendly, but it still matters and it can be expressed in completely different ways.
Now a word from our sponsors.
Hi, before using Dubby, I was a father of 12. But now, after Dubby, I'm a deadbeat dad.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Let's see what we got in here for the Dubby. Big Dubby! We got the motherfucking... We got the motherfucking... We got the motherfucking... Oh, shit. So the first flavor of Dubby, we have peach and beet.
You what?
Second flavor of Dubby, we got the dragon milk. Next flavor we have laxative.
What?
Laxy grenade. Next flavor we have this is a zero sugar powder pack. And last but certainly not least, we have Heinz Berry Splash. I'm Wasabi, and this has been your Dubby advertisement.
But one last thing before we get into that, I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers so that I can feed my addiction to triple dippers. So if you like the video, comment, like, share, subscribe, share with a bird, share with a friend. I don't care, share with somebody. I appreciate it and it helped me out a lot. Skill expression, especially in the modern gaming space where there are more competitive games than ever, and that esports is, a real thing now and not just something that people can, just imagine and everything like that. Since competitive gaming is like a good chunk of the games that we have coming out, every game that comes out now has some type of skill expression, especially with the revitalization of the Souls-like series. Skill expression now is more important than it ever has been in gaming history, in my opinion. Because back in the olden days of my childhood in the 2000s, which seems like forever ago, skill expression wasn't really a thing unless you were playing, like really, really hard games like Ninja Gaiden and stuff like that. But for the most part, majority of games, there wasn't really any skill expression needed, because back in the day, multiplayer games weren't really a thing. Like, they were around, but they weren't the norm back then. Now that multiplayer and competitive games have become the norm, skill expression is needed in basically every single game that you play, and there needs to be a way for it to be expressed in every single game that you play. Because a lot of players yearn for a way to show that all the hours that they have in whatever game that they're playing has to be worth it outside of getting, a platinum trophy. Because while yes, you can platinum any game that you want to, being able to show off, all the hours that you have in, Marvel Rivals, Red Dead Redemption, or Sekiro, or Dark Souls, they want to be able to be rewarded for playing these games multiple times and not just playing these games, one time or a couple of times. And yes, this does kind of carry over to, story-based games and games that don't have a multiplayer at all. Take the Devil May Cry series, for example. I believe it's the special edition of Devil May Cry 4, which has an entire battle arena type of thing where people will, try to get, the best, combos that they can, and try to get, the triple S and the highest ranked combos that you can. That's a form of skill expression in a game that doesn't even have a multiplayer or competitive aspect to it. That's just a straight up single player game with a side mode that you do it at like New Game Plus and type shit. So it is safe to say that single player games do have skill expression. It's just expressed in a different way in multiplayer and competitive games. Speedrunning is a form of skill expression which is used in majority, if not all, of single player games. Mario 64, every Souls-like game that's come out over the past 5 years, Elden Ring, Lies of P, Sekiro, like all those games have become like, staples in the speedrun community of people doing, level run speed runs, like no hit speed runs. If you get hit, you die, you have to start all over type of speed runs. And those are just another form of skill expression, because not every person who's played Elden Ring and Sekiro can do that, because those are stupidly hard games. So even in single player games, skill expression, especially now, has become very, very important to show people that, the 500 or 800 hours that they have, it matters a lot, because the 500 to 800 hours, people want a reason to justify that other than they're just addicted to the game. But the main place that you will find skill expression and where skill expression matters the most is multiplayer and online competitive games. The place where I personally think that it kind of, originated and why it kind of, rose to the top to begin with, in my most humblest opinion, is fighting games. And like I said earlier in the video, I got inspired by this because people were talking about the skill expression of Sagat's moveset in Street Fighter 6 and how it might be changed because of the modern control scheme, and how, his fireballs, might have been changed or might have been tweaked, and how that'll change the skill expression from how he was played, since he's a legacy character, all the way back from, Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 2, and stuff like that. But if I can just be honest for a second, I feel like fighting games were like the first games to really showcase skill expression, because way back in the day in the arcades, you knew who really knew how to play the game because of if they knew the combos, and if they knew the frames and all the other type of stuff, and just by the sheer amount of people that they might have been beating in the arcades back in the day. And while yes, there is a lot of skill expression and stuff like hero shooters and Marvel Rivals, Overwatch, and stuff like that, fighting games show off the individual skill expression that a lot of gamers yearn for in the modern gaming days that we have now, and it's probably the best way to express that if you want to play an online game. The difference between somebody who plays Street Fighter daily versus somebody who just casually plays Street Fighter is seen throughout the gameplay. You'll be able to tell if your friend is good at camera or not based off of how good their combos are, how good they know the frame data, how good they know just the timing of just moves in general, how they move and how they interact with people while playing Street Fighter. Because if you watch any pro Street Fighter, Tekken, or any pro fighting game, the pros who play this game are just on a completely different level from anybody else who says that they play fighting games a lot. You can tell who trains in fighting games. Versus people who just play fighting games. Because there's a difference between actively training and learning what you do wrong and actually wanting to get better at Street Fighter versus just playing Street Fighter and thinking that you're good at it. The skill expression of a character like Rashid, for example, is leaps and bounds, has some of the most visually pleasing skill expression in the game, because of the sheer amount of combos and sheer amount of time that his combos last. He's like a Tekken character in Street Fighter sometimes. It's kind of ridiculous. And seeing any top level Rashid player, or any character for that matter, you can tell the differences in the play styles and the differences between the different types of skill expression that each character has based off the archetype that character is. Whether that be a zoner, a rushdown character, or even a grappler, different types of skill expression are always represented in fighting games, and you can tell, which ones are popular based off, how much the character is played. And since I have a stupid amount of time in the game, let's just go ahead and talk about Rivals. Rivals, just like his brother Overwatch, has a lot of skill expression with a lot of different characters, unless you're playing Squirrel Girl. But my Squirrel Girl hatred aside, the skill expression in Rivals is shown a lot, regardless of what the community says by saying that half of the supports are brain dead and every single part of it is broken. There's skill to be expressed even with characters that people deem as brain dead or brainless. As a Rocket main myself, I've been getting slandered by the community since the game first came out by saying that the character is brain dead, brainless, used to be AFK and hold left click through games, which if your team is just dominating and your DPS are actually getting kills and you're just stomping the other team, and yeah, a lot of times you can just hold left click and just play a cart princess and you don't really have to worry about anything. But there's a lot of skills to be expressed with a character like Rocket, because his main thing is survivability, mobility, and getting out of situations that other supports like Luna cannot get out of. Because Rocket is the only character that I feel comfortable with playing into a team of full dive, because I know that when the Captain America, Iron Fist, and Psylocke all come diving at me at the same time, I can get away. But if I'm playing somebody like Luna, I'm basically just sitting there waiting to respawn again because I didn't hit my freeze, or my freeze did hit, but there were 2 and 3 other people on me using their ults and killing me. And this is a section where I kind of will express, like, there are different ways of showing skill expression and different just forms of skill expression being shown in different characters, because I feel like, especially in a game like Marvel Rivals, people kind of have this obsession with mechanical skill expression. And the same thing can be said for fighting games as well, but in hero shooters and just shooter games in general, people kind of have this obsession with mechanical skill expression, and mechanical skill expression being the only type of skill expression that people quote unquote respect, or that people will, you know, give props to. Because in a game like Marvel Rivals, a lot of the supports you don't necessarily have to be the best mechanical hero shooter player to learn how to play them and to really get good. Because with supports like Cloak and Dagger and Rocket, you don't necessarily have to aim your shots like you do with Luna. With Luna, you have to aim your shots, which are your heals and your damage, like you're aiming with the Punisher essentially. If you have good game with, you know, majority of the DPS, you're gonna have good aim with Luna. But with Rocket and C&D, you don't necessarily have to aim your shots like you're aiming with the Punisher. You can just sort of shoot in the general direction, and the shots will instantly heal your allies on your team. And since those two supports don't have these traditional mechanical skill ceiling like a character like Luna, or even have a skill shot, they're seen as, you know, brain dead or just AFK supports, when in reality there's a lot of skill to be expressed with those types of characters, but yet people don't really seem to respect it because there's not a lot of mechanical skill instead of a character like, you know, Luna or even Mantis. And even with a character like Mantis, her heals you don't have to aim, but she's more of a DPS support, so her job is to mainly just act as another DPS, to where you have to aim your shots and hit your skill shot, which is her sleep. So on the mechanical skill level, she is very, very high, whereas somebody like Rocket and C&D are not high as far as mechanical skills go. But just because they don't have the mechanical skill ceiling of a character, you know, like Luna, doesn't mean, at least in my eyes, that they deserve, you know, less respect or, you know, less kudos. We deserve less kudos when people get good with those characters. And no, it's not, you know, quote unquote easy to get good with Rocket or C&D. They're easy to learn, but they're hard characters to master, because we've all seen those horrible Rockets who decide to throw their beacon in the middle of the fight and then wondering why nobody gets revived. Or we'll see the horrible C&Ds who will ult in a match with a Magneto and don't try to hide for cover when he counter ults, and then they just die every single time. Or when they ult at half health and die before they can even get the fucking, you know, tagline done when they're ult. Essentially, characters like Rocket and characters like Cloak and Dagger, or even Invisible Woman, they have a lot of nuances to it. And skill expression is essentially all about nuance to me. Because because just looking at a Rocket Raccoon player from, you know, a far distance, you're not being impressed that much. But you can say that about a lot of characters in Marvel Rivals and in games just in general. Because as easy as people say that, you know, Rocket Raccoon just holds, you know, his left click and doesn't do anything else, I could easily just say that Thing players just jump and hold right click and then dash every now and again, and then just continue to jump and hold right click until they have their ult. But we know that it's a lot more nuances to that. I can say the same thing about a character like Scarlet Witch. All you do is just run around and just hold left click and occasionally do your right click and occasionally hit your ult, and she's not that skillful. But it's all about nuance. We all know that people who just play Marvel Rivals in general all know that all those characters take skill to be good at and take a lot of skill to be great at. But from face value, without any nuance to it, it doesn't look that skillful.
He's kind of buns. Brother, I'm 16-1, and my backline has died twice, and we forced them off of dive completely. Almost single-handedly. Presses one button repeatedly. Unfortunately, and I mean this with about as much respect as I can flame someone with, if you look at the gameplay and think it's only just pressing one button, unfortunately you just don't have a very good understanding of the game.
See, at least Flats agrees with me. But once all those nuances are understood, and once all those nuances are, you know, we are able to actually understand and appreciate the differences of these characters, and not just in Marvel Rivals, but in any game, we're able to understand and appreciate the different types of skill expression that is showing off in these types of games. And it shows off the different type of play styles that other characters can, you know, have and show, because every character doesn't need to play the same. Because if every character has the mechanical, you know, skill ceiling and skill floor of Spider-Man, then the game wouldn't be played as much. And if every character in Street Fighter played like Guile, nobody would play it. And if every character was just Jigglypuff stalling in the air like the fucking Prime Hungry Box, nobody would play Smash Brothers either. The important thing to note is that skill expression can be expressed in completely different ways, and it's okay that they're not all just these mechanical skills that you need to be Shroud just to fucking play. It's okay that Rocket Raccoon and C&D, you don't need frame perfect aim to, you know, hit your shots and heal people, and that you're not dashing around the map, pressing every single button on your controller just to have fun or to be good at a character. It's okay that people like Guile and people like Dawson play more of a defensive zoning tactic to catch their opponents in traps rather than just rushing them down like Cammy. That is okay. Different forms of skill expression are okay, and they are the most important, because if every single skill expression was the same, no skill would be expressed at all.
And you